A pleasure to me all at last. Welcome back to Films I'm Willing to Talk About Again. So, for today, what we're going to do is circumnavigate the third film in the small series that I simply dubbed the Stenstrom Scooby films. Yeah, this was the small continuity that helped fuel an entire new generation worth of fans. But while Scooby-Doo wasn't exactly dormant or on hiatus or anything like that, it was thanks to these four films and the commercial success that they brought about between 1998 and 2001 that brought a number of new people to the franchise and allowed for them to simply delve into the major history that's unfolded since 1969, when Scooby-Doo at the time was 30 years old. Well, enter the new millennium, the year 2000, a time where it's more than 30 years old now. Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders was the third film in the series. Of course, we do have Stenstrom at the head in directing the film, but we also do have ourselves the writers in hand, which, I'm gonna be honest with you this time, Hanna-Barbera. Yeah, that's right. William Hanna. And who would have thought? Now we get Joseph Barbera in the equation? Yeah. No joke. This is probably one of the only times where we got to have Hanna and Barbera come around for these films. Because they've definitely had a lot of history with their own company. With all the cartoons they made, not just Scooby-Doo, but also Yogi Bear and Quick Draw McGraw, which I've talked about before in TV shows that deserved the spotlight last summer. And with other things that also came and went. Yeah, it's probably not that very good to get off track here. So anyways, back to Alien Invaders. The plot itself revolves around the mystery gang driving around one night in the state of New Mexico. But unlike with many other episodes or films that revolved around the characters, Fred Jones is usually the driver of the mystery machine. But now this time, it's Shaggy and Scooby at the driver and passenger seat. That's because the others decided to take a nap in the back. And while they are jamming out on the radio, eventually, the rest wake up and try to check up on things. Shaggy requests that they pull over to get a meal, even though they had just eaten 2 hours ago, which, fun fact, is apparently 14 hours in Scooby-Doo's own time. So, yeah, self-explanatory enough. They do eventually decide to make a pit stop anyways, because they do in fact end up stranded. The mystery machine ends up in shambles. They can't quite seem to get a good hand ready to fix it, at least for the time. So for the rest of the night, they basically just decide to buckle down. Yeah, so as disheartening as it might sound for the mystery machine to already be put out on commission, keep in mind, this same car had been through a lot of trauma since 1969. And it technically is the same exact type of model that it has been since day one. A lot of people have gone on record to try and find out what exact model the van itself is, and it's safe to say that it could just be an early model Chevy or Ford type of cargo van in a way that is specifically decorated and painted with the unique colors and shapes that the Mystery Gang is known for. Of course, we can't forget to mention the Mystery Gang with their styles and the types of clothes they wear and the types of personalities they have. They are still well replicated even after all this time. So, of course, I also can't forget to mention the fact that the cast itself is a bit different. Of course, we have Mary-Kate Bergen, who comes along as Daphne, and we have Frank Welker once at it again with the likes of Fred Jones. And while Scott Innes did the likes of Scooby-Doo, he also does the voice of Shaggy around here. I guess it might have been the fact that Billy West was busy working on Philip J. Fry from Futurama. Who really knows? But in any case though, Innes does a pretty decent job at substituting for West in this part of the series. So it's still nice that we do have a unique voice for Shaggy Rogers, but I wouldn't really say it was as good as the likes of other voices back then. And even then, Matthew Lillard would eventually take over, so he definitely shaped the character once and for all with his own voice acting talent. But that wouldn't happen till later. unfortunate as it might sound. Anyways, though, once they realize that they're stranded in the middle of the desert near the township of Roswell. Yeah, who would have thought? Of all places they could end up in, it kind of is a bit on the stereotype kind of feeling, yeah. I know, it just seems a bit endearing, but it kind of is true. Roswell might have been famous for alien invaders, but it was more or less a conspiracy that was put out there. A whole new menagerie of events. In any case, though, time passes, and Scooby and Shaggy eventually come across a duo known by the names of Crystal and Amber. Basically, we have one hippie with a dog, and now we got another hippie with a dog. And on top of that, Crystal happens to be a good photographer. Yeah, who would have thought? That he would basically fall head over heels over her, and Scooby would feel a similar way to Amber. Well, it eventually culminates to a series of, get this, alien invaders. Yeah. So you might be wondering, what does all of this have to do for the film itself? Well, you know what, to tell you the truth, it basically just comes around to the point where we actually do have ourselves more of a romantic type of film rather than something that's strictly focused on the likes of crime and mystery. Because after all, the mystery machine technically broke down because, get this, a UFO ends up smashing into it. Yeah, who would have thought? It'd be like if I was driving down and Duncan gets hit by a meteor or something. What are the chances of that happening in real life? I guess impossible. Oh, but you know what though? And guess what? We actually do come across a big significance here. In the township of Roswell, with very little of it that's left, a waitress known by the name of Dottie apparently has claimed that a number of people seem to have gone missing mysteriously. And on top of that, there are other members of the township as well, such as Lester. He himself had actually been abducted, or so he claims to be. So of course, while the mystery gang are a bit skeptical about the idea of aliens supposedly causing all of these disappearances and having kidnapped Lester at one point in life, they actually do go on record to attempt to draw forward, hoping to find out who was directly responsible for these disappearances. And well, they do thankfully find solace and are welcomed into Lester's home, and while Shaggy and Scooby are unfortunately out of luck due to the house not being big enough for all of them to fit inside of, it eventually does, believe it or not, culminate to an abduction. Yep, that's right. Because Shaggy and Scooby end up finding themselves in the middle of a tractor beam that ends up, in fact, sending them off to the stars. Yeah. They're welcomed to the aliens themselves. The members on board that ship, and by the time that they end up falling unconscious and then waking back up on Earth, yeah. Try to explain that overnight. But you know what? Because after all that's gone down, Scooby was able to fight them, and that's how they ended up on Earth. So, I guess you could say that they were lucky to have somehow been able to escape the clutches of such horrible monsters from the stars. But then, of course, well, that's actually where we do get to come across the likes of Crystal and Amber. Because, apparently, when they were out in the desert, these are the first two faces they find. It takes a bit of a while before they're able to find the rest. And who would have thought that much like with The Witch's Ghost, where we have the Hex Girls play their own song for the soundtrack, we actually get another addition to the soundtrack. Yeah. Shaggy apparently not only falls head over heels for her, but starts experiencing his own visions of a supposed time where he actually gets married to her, has their own house together, with Scooby and Amber pretty much having their own relationship. Yeah. So, yeah, another song to add to the list. And Scooby-Doo is known for having a lot of music over the years. And of course, it's a comedy, so what better way to amp up the comedy than by adding some romance to the whole thing? Anyways, though, when the two testify about their abduction by the aliens, that actually helps them draw even more attention to the likes of the case itself. Yeah, because when the rest of the mystery gang start coming across, well, there basically is a little organization known as Search for Alien Life Forms, which is very similar in a way to SETI, or SETI. Satellite dishes that apparently have been tracking the UFOs. They had not only apparently been responsible for the claims of abductees, people-wise, but apparently livestock had also gone missing as well. So it's fair to say that these alien invaders really do have a knack for abduction. So it apparently does come together to a point where two government agents come across the gang. Scooby and Shaggy try to show off their funny karate skills. The aliens appear again, and a whole new series of chase work is done with another song for the soundtrack. The aliens are here. Yeah. And well, guess what? When all that comes around, when the aliens are finally apprehended, turns out those two government agents from before were the aliens. Wow. Apparently, these two guys were apparently trying to commit a series of crimes against Roswell. And well, they of course end up getting taken in for that. Meanwhile, what about the rest that goes on? Well, guess what? Turns out that the likes of Crystal and Amber, they both have their own unique power, because they apparently themselves are alien life forms. Yeah, if you remember when the agents caught them with the camera, she tells them it's digital, but the technology inside doesn't look very conventional, much like our own stuff. And you know what? It's safe to say that that was a good time for the two to leave Earth and head back to their world. So that's basically what you can tell was a good thing that happened. They were good species from another world that had come to visit Earth in a peaceful manner, mostly in a way to study the likes of the life forms that inhabit Earth. And I'd say they definitely knew quite well. The mystery gang had all the intention of solving the case and apprehending the people responsible for these different abductions and etc. So it was a goodbye for Crystal and Amber to the rest of the gang, and all goes from then on out much better than it did when we started. And so, from getting hit by a UFO to being out on the run again, the mystery gang are now on the move, and another case is complete. So this marks the end of the third film in the series, and all that's left for me to cover now is Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, the fourth in the Stenstrom series, and the last to be made. Because it was by this point where commercial success wasn't entirely as big as it used to be. While these films were amazing, by all means, it doesn't mean that they were going to last much longer. And so, I will cover Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase tomorrow on Friday. I'll see you guys then.
I want you